THA Talks, for free thought and open minds.
And for freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm Paul Obertelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give some feedback, or maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, email us info@thatalks.com, and don't forget you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello everybody, thanks for tuning in again here on THA Talks. Firstly, I'd like to just say we have actually started to upload more of our shows onto YouTube now. We're going to start to use that channel a little bit more. In fact, we're going to be publishing our shows on YouTube as and when we do them, so you'll be able to access them from our website, from the RSS feeds that we've got from there, which we will be adding more content to and ideas over the coming months as I keep planning on doing. But we'll also be uploading the shows to YouTube purely because we found a way of doing that where it's a bit easier now, and we are going to start adding some different bits and pieces to YouTube as well. May even at some stage start doing some live talks via video on YouTube or Google or whatever it is. If you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, you can visit it. If you go to our website homepage, in the top right hand corner you'll see some tabs. There's a YouTube tab there, just click on it and that will take you to our channel. Also you can just type in the address www.youtube.com/user/THA Talks, and that is our address for the YouTube channel. Please pop along and subscribe. I would just like to say too, if there's any YouTube subscribers listening now, I've actually been uploading a lot of our content from our website up onto the channel, so you may come across some very dated material, but I'm kind of just putting it up there so it's got an archive of the stuff we've done up there. But I am going to start uploading new content as well to YouTube, so it's going to be part of our database basically, and it's going to be much more up to date. So you got that to look forward to. Well, today we're going to be speaking with someone is a little bit more on the far outside, bit out there. I mean, we've covered a lot of politics recently on the show with John White with What's News, which is very difficult not to at the moment because there's so much going on out there and we're so passionate about it all. But we still like that stuff where you've really got to keep an open mind with, and this is definitely one of those shows. It's a cliche, I always say it, you keep your mind open but don't let your brains fall out. And it is a cliche, but I think definitely it's healthy to keep an open mind with anything. And I know a lot of people laugh and roll their eyes, and there's a lot of rubbish out there, I know that, but I've always got time for it on this show just to have a listen. You never know, one day some of this stuff might actually happen to you. Today we're going to be speaking with Chad and Alta Dillard, who are the authors of the book Orbducted in the French Quarter. It's an abduction case, and we're going to be hearing all about it. Hello, Chad and Alta. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, we're doing well. Thank you for having us.
Hi. Yes. Thank you so much for having us.
Well, it's definitely our pleasure. We've covered this topic before. It's a fascinating topic. Aliens, UFOs, it's kind of really far out there. And I know that there'll be a lot of our listeners that are thinking, oh, come on, give me a break. But a lot of them as well. We've got a lot of people into this kind of stuff that believe in it. And so you get a balanced kind of take on it here on THA Talks. and it's something I'm very open-minded with. I definitely believe there is something out there. That I'm a believer. I haven't really made my mind up as what it is yet, or what they are, or the whole details of it. But I'm really looking forward to hearing your account and your story. I mean, first of all, before we hear all about it, I mean, before you had this experience, were you at all into this kind of stuff? Were you researchers, or were you passionate about these kind of conspiracies, or was it something that you'd never really looked into much?
Not really. I watched Star Trek and Star Wars and all that, but I mean, it was all sci-fi, not sci-fact. So, we really weren't into it.
Right. I'll just quickly mention, not at all.
Yeah.
In my case, not at all. I hadn't even seen Star Wars. I mean, I just had no interest. I love the stars as far as looking at them. I'm originally from the deserts of Arizona, and folks who know that part of the world, those are big, beautiful skies. But I had no interest in what is so-called out there.
It's something, the whole kind of aliens, UFO thing. There's a lot of stuff that's out there kind of contradicts itself, and then there's some other stuff that I find is really really compelling and just makes sense. You hear it, it rings true. I mean, I haven't looked too much into your case because I wanted to just sort of speak to you about it as if we just bumped into each other at a bar somewhere, and you telling me this very fascinating story. So I'll just roll off it from there. So let's start from the beginning then, and how this encounter started.
Well, Chad's kind of motioning me to begin this, so I'll try to kind of quickly frame this for us.
Okay.
Just a little peripheral, the background on Chad and Alta. I'm 10 years older than Chad. I'm a 50s baby, born in the 50s. But I might add, it shocks people when they meet me in terms of my youthfulness, and I might think that could have something to do with the fact I never had children. I'm not sure.
Right.
But, whatever the case, 10 years older than Chad. I'm a 50s baby. Chad's obviously a 60s baby. As I said, I'm from Arizona originally, told that I'm of mixed native blood, as well as French and Scottish. But the native tribes are how I'm traditionally kind of raised, in the sense that my mom says that we're originally from a reservation area of Arizona. Now, I'm not connected to it most of my life. I'm kind of raised around the country and traveled a lot in the world. But my mom always made sure, and I'm raised predominantly by a mother. I have really no other family members that I have any connection to growing up at all, with the exception of a stepfather who happened to pass. He died when I was about 15 years old. I'm 60 now. So anyhow, I have, kind of what I consider a mysterious background, just from the virtue of lots of questions about my background. Really have not had any answers, and I haven't been able to find any answers. So that would take a lot of time, and, I don't want to bore folks, but it kind of lends into what I feel is, my words are, I believe that Chad and I say this with all the love in my soul, were arranged in 1990 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, I'll have Chad share his little background with you himself, but I'll mention he happens to be from Arkansas. To the best of our knowledge, he's got no native blood in his family. And to the best of my knowledge, I never understood that I had any Arkansas blood in my family. But in our arrangement, again, I've borrowed the term high strangeness a long time ago from a well-known researcher. I've used it consistently for many years now. And as far as I'm concerned, that term, applies to anything weird, anything.
Yeah.
And so there was tremendous, as far as I'm concerned, high strangeness involved in Chad and I being arranged originally. But let me fast forward. Within 24 hours of our meeting, we discovered that his grandfather, who had already passed on by the time I came into the picture in 1990, we discovered that the grandfather's birth name and I share the same identical name, as in his grandfather's first name is Alta. That goes beyond high strangeness. And his last name happened to be Duncan, and that's my mom's name, which is essentially mine. So that just kind of jumps it off from the very beginning for me of I've said in the past, I'm kind of an odds girl. And as I say, what are the odds? What are the odds that, I would meet this stranger whose grandfather and I share the same very bizarre, strange name. There's never been any answers as to how the grandfather got that name because the world knew him as George. Nobody even knew that was his first name. So that's just kind of the tweakiness of the beginnings of us. I'll move us forward here and I'll have Chad share with you any of his past he cares to. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm from Arkansas, Little Rock, grew up most of my life there. And like I said earlier, really not into a lot of the sci-fi kind of, or not into, UFOs and all that. But, I did have experience throughout my young childhood, just kind of some really weird things that nobody could explain, like, coming home at my dad's house and, furniture being rearranged and kind of creepy things like that. When he was a farmer in Arkansas, there was these 3 burnt circles out in the middle of the crop field. So, just again, something that was not, nobody could explain. They'd been farmers all their lives and had never seen it. So, but
and keep in mind that would have been in the early 70s, way before people were talking about what we understand are the crop circle language. So, just kind of denoting the time frame.
Yeah.
So you think that there was some kind of spiritual pulling towards the two of you together, and it's very, very relevant for the moment.
Spiritual is an interesting word. I personally kind of have let me say this, just straight up, I am clueless. And people get very frustrated with me in particular when they, engage in these conversations with us or allow us to share with them what I consider my truth, our truth, is I cannot answer the who, what, or how. I can only describe what we have experienced. And some of the emotional feedback from it, I feel from the very beginning when I use the word arranged that there is something out there. I don't know what out there even means any longer with all the language of dimensionals and parallels and vortexes and you name it. But I've always had this very strange sense, as many state that they are being watched throughout their life. I certainly feel that. I've often felt also that something's out there pointing and laughing in many ways.
I mean, you've mentioned that you both have Native American blood. Do you think that that's relevant to this contact?
Well, no, actually, Chad has none that we're aware of.
Oh, sorry.
In his family.
Okay, I thought you said earlier.
Yeah, what I was indicating, and that was part of the high strangeness to me again or just the weirdness of the fact that I'm from Arizona, told of mixed Native blood, and Chad, Arkansas, with none. And his grandfather shares that same very strange name with me. Because it's just not a name. Alta is needless to say, not a common name whatsoever. And I've certainly never heard of a man with that name.
Okay, so I mean, let's go right into the actual experience then. Tell us about it. What led up to it? What were you doing at the time?
Right. So once again, I'll lead this off. Chad and I married in 1991, and we'll fast forward. We relocated ourselves to Louisiana in about 1994. 1994 was the event, and I call it these events, that essentially I feel kind of put us in a situation where we couldn't ignore any longer. Something was going on. I still do not know how to answer what the something is. I don't use the word aliens. I don't use the word ETs. I don't use any of that language. So in my case, so anyhow, I'll have Chad describe to you what happened to us in 94 when we first moved to Louisiana. We were not living in the New Orleans area. We were about an hour or so outside of the city.
Yeah, this was in Hammond, Louisiana. We were coming to town for dinner for the evening, and it hadn't gotten dark yet. It was still kind of dawn, dusk. And we come around this group of trees and we look up into the sky, and there's this craft in the sky, pretty low to the ground, as far as like it's under cloud level, and it's just humongous. I'm like football, size, football stadium size, just huge, moving very slowly,
if at all.
if at all. Very dark, very flat on the bottom, kind of a rectangle, but not as wide on one end as the other. Had 2 or 3 lights on the front, 2 or 3 lights in the back, and we're both sitting there looking at it. It's on the right-hand side of the road, so it's on here in the States, it'd be the passenger side of the road.
We're not sitting, he's driving,
Yeah,
and
we're
I'm passenger.
We're driving, Alta's passenger. And we're just kind of looking at it. Alta kind of turns and looks at me. I looked at her. I looked back up at it. And just to see, to make sure my eyes weren't, that I saw what I saw. And I definitely saw what I saw. And it was we never spoke. We never said a word. It was kind of like, a big gulp, and like, okay, if, they don't, if I don't see them, if they don't know that I saw them, they won't know that I saw them. They won't see me, kind of thing. And we drove on. We never spoke about it at dinner time or anything. Went home that evening. The only reason we brought it back up was the next day there was either a write-up in the paper or radio or something like that. It was just bizarre. It was mind-blowing.
So essentially, that's our awakening, if you will. But we chose, in that experience, to stay asleep, as they call it. We were in beyond denial. Now, Chad's repeated it calmly to you. I'm much more flamboyant, apparently, in my language, but let me just say, I was in absolute beyond shock. There's no words to describe it. I refused to look at it because it wasn't there. All I could do was look at Chad, begging him silently to tell me that's not there.
So was it just the look of it just looked, God, that looks strange, or was it how it was moving? What was it that freaked you out about it?
Well, I don't ever remember being in shock in the past in my life. And again, I have a lot of strangeness in my early childhood, but in my memory, I don't ever being in shock before. And I was in absolute shock, which was why I can't account for that. Can't account for anything other than expressing to you what I experienced. I know that I shut down. I was shutting down where that just wasn't there. If I don't acknowledge that, that's not there. Now, as crazy as it sounds, I've spent 20 years now doing nothing but researching, not for any other purpose other than trying to find answers. I still have none, but I am discovering there's a whole lot of folks out there who seem to have some of the same kinds of reactions, if not the same. So, when we've shared this in the past, I'll say this very quickly. We've had somebody actually a few times ask us where our camera was. Why not pictures? I'm thinking, I guess they've never experienced shock either, because that's the only way I know how to describe it. So again, in reference to the story, this is what we experienced. Now, Chad had to take it in. Thank the heavens, thank the gods, because he's still watching the road, but he is taking in what he can take in. And
it was so massive. It was just so massive.
Right. And it didn't appear, what quickly I took it in, it did not appear to be moving with no sound.
Well, that would look really freaky, wouldn't it? Because if it's just going, even if it's going very slow, you're thinking, how the hell is that thing staying up there? And this is why UFOs look so strange to people, because it's like they're just kind of barely moving, but yet they're still in the sky. That's the strange thing about them, yeah.
Yeah, and take in, folks, anybody kind enough to be hearing us, this unknown in the sky, what others, we could clearly call a UFO in this regards, was larger than the supersized Walmart and its parking lot and everything else, I think, around it. I mean, I've used the term in the past, like a floating city. It was massive. it was just that big.
So what, I mean, you neither of you were particularly into any of this kind of stuff before. So what was it
No.
about it that didn't you think, oh, is that a military thing or something? What spooked you out? Because obviously you felt it was something more than a military craft or something like that. What was it that really kind of spooked you about it? Describe the sighting of it. What was it that really, it gave you a shiver down your spine, so to speak?
Again, just the size, the shape. There were no wings. There were no, anything like that to it. So just the size and the shape of it. And, it just felt like, it knew what everybody was doing down here, because there was other traffic on the street. Like I said, this was not, in the middle of the night. This was,
Busy time,
and there was nobody pulling over, it wasn't like, people pointing out in the sky and stopping on the side of the road or anything, it was so, for that,
yeah,
nobody else, it's like nobody else saw it or something. I don't know.
But we know somebody had to have, because they reported it.
Right.
Because we wouldn't be having this conversation about this event if it not for the fact that somebody else either called it in or they called it in apparently either to the news or to the radio, police, wherever it was, because we heard it on the news. And I'm like, oh my God, Jesus, that makes whatever that was real. And again, we shut down again very quickly we never discussed it anymore. These kinds of behaviors, I don't know how to explain. I just know that that's what we experienced and what we did about it, which was nothing, because that just didn't take any precedence in my mind of importance. It was too big. It was too beyond anything I could comprehend. So, again, just had no interest at trying to further to understand it.
Yeah, it's kind of sometimes that's any kind of trauma. Trauma is a funny word because you don't actually have to be suffered something tough trauma. It can just you could just literally be freaked out, and you kind of shut it down, don't you? Especially some people out there that aren't really used to this stuff or open-minded to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can kind of, I've got too much in my life to worry about stuff like this. What the hell that was,
right.
That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, so that was the first experience you had, and then let's unfold it a bit further then.
So this takes place in 94, somewhere relatively shortly after this event took place. Chad and I made the decision, I'll just try to kind of frame again this experience itself, of moving to the French Quarter of New Orleans. We were extremely naive. I want to preface, we were extremely naive at the time of moving to the French Quarter, in terms of we had no clue how expensive it was to live there. We were not prepared for that. And then, all of the other high strangeness associated with the French Quarter, which is now becoming quite famous, I guess, with movies and TV shows and so on about werewolves, vampires, so on and so forth, connected with the French Quarter. Well, we just would like folks to remember, after moving there and living in that experience, that's a community that is, about 300 years old, Chad? I believe we're about to celebrate like the 300th year. And with you all in Europe, this is more natural for you with your structures and your energies that are there for eons. This is in the United States, of course, French Quarter, very old, because these structures are still authentic. These houses and slave quarters and all that was experienced in a very kind of relatively short confined area, such as about, I think, 13 blocks square is, I believe, what the French Quarter measures out to. So we have tremendous high strangeness experiences, paranormal, of all facets, just about from the moment we moved to the French Quarter. Again, it'll take too much time and take away from, I believe, what this is moving us to, which is what others consider the main event. But let me just add before we move on, in the time that we, learn the French Quarter, we are experiencing everything from ghost to missing time to time parallels to things being poltergeisty kind of experiences to, I mean, it's pretty much runs the gamut in regards to energy, kind of high strangeness. And we are both having pretty major experiences together and separately. Now, this is about 1995. I'll fast forward us now to 1997. We are now living in an environment. We have moved kind of up in the world. We've worked very hard for a couple of years to kind of get our feet on the ground, figure out the territory, kind of find our bases as far as balance, because that's the secret. I believe that's the secret everywhere, but certainly in the quarter. So we're living in a townhouse that high strangeness was involved in setting that up for us. No question about it, because it should have been monthly extremely expensive. It was furnished, and the furniture looked like something out of your castles. It was Louis the whatever, and it was unbelievable. And we were renting it almost for nothing. And that's just bizarre in its own words. We don't have that kind of luck. But this seemed to be being set up for us to get us in this location. Well, now this is 1997. My birthday is my birthday of 1997. My mother, who lives in Arkansas at the time, she's in poor health. She's going to relocate to the French Quarter and live with us. Not in our townhouse, but we pre-rented her a mother-in-law cottage in our courtyard so we can all be together. Chad and my mom are very close. And so it was going to be the perfect world for all of us. That was not meant to be. Literally on my 40th birthday, my mom died. And she was 24 hours of relocating to be with us when this happened. So that's a shock, again, I was not prepared for, nor was Chad. We had to contend with that and deal with it. That was in, like I said, 1997. Fast forward now, 3 months after my mom's death, my birthday. At the time now, I'm 40. Chad's 30. There's another woman that's involved in this event that we've written about in this book that we've, created from this experience. We call her Christine in the book. She was 24 at the time, so just to give you the age ranges. She had never been married before and she had no children either. Chad and I, now almost 28 years, have still never had children. She happens to be the manager of the shop that I work in the quarter, or she's whatever her duties are. And we become extremely close from the minute we meet. Now, it makes no difference that I've got a lot of age on her. It almost seems ageless. It's as if I've known her forever. She's tall, slender, long blonde hair, very attractive, no drama queen at all. I don't believe really into paranormal as such. She certainly has admitted to having some, strange experiences in her life, but it's not her thing either. Never heard her really speaking about anything out there. So again, just to give you an idea of her personality. She's also very black and white in regards to my take on her attitude about things, right and wrong kind of. She strives for the welfare of children. That's very important to this story. She is very committed to the welfare of Earth. She went on to get her degree in environmental science, just to give you an idea. So at the time, though, she's just working in the shop, figuring out she's a transplant there also. She knows how much pain Chad and I are in over the loss of my mom. She asked me if I wanted to go out one evening and have dinner and drinks in the quarter. We had never done it before. I accepted. Chad and I only lived a couple blocks from our shop. I say, let's call Chad. I know he'll want to join us. We want him to. We call Chad. So this is where the real night begins. So it's probably about 9:30 when our night actually begins. The three of us step outside of the shop. She locks the doors around 9:30. Again, to move the story along much quicker, because there's a whole lot in between, we end up crossing the quarter in an hour and a half. The last memory the three of us have collectively is 11 o'clock. In that hour and a half, we stopped in 3 different locations across the quarter. A couple of them we knew, one of them we didn't know. Let me just say, we stepped into the Twilight Zone. That's the only way I know how to describe it, the Twilight Zone. It was bizarre, meaning French Quarter is a community that never stops. Bars stay open all night. Conventions come in from all over the world. High tourism, you name it. Not on this night. On this night, there were very few people. Very few. And what I mean by that is each location we stopped at to have dinner or drinks, if they had a kitchen or a wait staff, there was no wait staff. If they had there were no patrons. There were nobody in any of these locations except one person, either a manager or a bartender. Every one of these places were completely empty. The rules also changed that night. Our last location was a location I'll have Chad share with you that we had spent a few years visiting on our days off. Not all the time, but when we weren't working, this was a place that we loved to go to. And I'll have Chad share with you, kind of the weirdness of how that started for us.
Yeah, this place was a Thai restaurant, and it had the restaurant was downstairs and the club was upstairs, and this was the only place that we went up the stairs. Actually, I'm the only one that got all the way up. By the time I got up the stairs, the girls are about halfway up the stairs. I look and the door's closed, and it said $5 cover charge. Well, that late at night, and we had frequent this place all the time. They never had a cover charge,
and they never had that door shut.
Yeah, so we just kind of pivoted right there on the steps, and went right back down.
We were grumbling our way back down the stairs, saying, we ain't ever done that before. We ain't starting that tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we tip. We always tip the band and all that.
Yeah.
That's how it usually works.
But it had already
in this
been
case,
leading
it
up
was already.
It had already been leading up for an hour prior to this of what I call the high strangeness of what the hey is going on. I mean, really, what is going on?
So at this stage, you've basically just gone into a town, you're checking out some places, and it's just strange. You're just there, and things don't seem quite normal, don't seem quite right, and that's as far as in your minds. That's what was going on at that time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now we actually lived in this community, so when you live someplace, it's rhythm. I don't care, where you live. It's rhythm. And we had lived there a couple of years. We knew that rhythm very well.
Yeah, and
and that wasn't happening.
If the tourist bars were not full, that means everybody's, that works, they're usually out and about. The locals are, in the local pubs and bars and
but
stuff.
Not this night.
But again, not this night. Not even the local bars had.
No.
And like I said, and we're walking around on foot, so, we're walking from place to place looking for, something to do, some place to hang out with, other people.
Just, again, what we're describing doesn't happen, but it did that night.
Okay.
So now we're at 11 o'clock. That's, as I said to you, the three of us remember as far as time is concerned. The last thing I remember is Chad and I kind of stepped away from our friend. And I sort of grumbled under my voice, I am so bored, I just want to go home. And we were only, several blocks away from where we lived. But I mean, I remember basically indicating I just wanted to get a cab and go home. That's how badly I just wanted to go. And I'm sitting on a stoop about halfway down the block of the last club that when we got to it, we saw it was as empty as all the rest of them. And I'm not thinking nothing high strangeness, paranormal, nothing. I'm just bored. I want to go home. And this is what I say to Chad. And that's the last thing the three of us remember in terms of being on that corner or on that street was saying, just want to go home. The next thing I know, I'll just kind of lead this off and then back to Chad. The next thing I know is it's the next day, somewhere between 8 and 9 the next morning. Now, my last, as I understand it, acute memory, if you will, is at 11 o'clock the night before on a street. The next thing I know, I'm now in my house. It's the next day because the sun is blaring through my window. Excuse me. I'm sitting straight up and I'm rubbing my arms. I can feel immediately that there's something in my upper arm. And I'm beyond, again, I'm trying to talk fast, but there is no describing to anybody. And I'd also like to mention, we've never tried to prove anything to anybody because this is what our truth is. just expressing what we have been put through, with still no understanding as to why on my part. But anyhow, I come to, I don't wake up, and my eyes pop wide open. I discovered there's a huge difference of coming to and waking up also. And my eyes, now I'm sitting straight up, rubbing my arms, but I'm looking around my house, and my immediate is, where is Chad? Where is our friend? Immediately. Because I don't see nobody. I look like I'm in an empty house. The only thing that's kind of keeping me, I feel, on the ground is that I can see, I've got visual into my bedroom from where I'm sitting, and I see a big lump in my bed. Now it's covered up with the blankies, clear up over the head, and it's a big lump. And I am just praying, to the heavens that lump belongs to me. But at that stage, as I'm taking that in, I'm only seeing one lump. At that stage, I would have been thrilled that my friend was in bed with my husband, because at least I could account for her, but there was no accounting for her. I saw nothing that indicated she was in that house. I wasn't even sure that the lump was Chad. This is how I come to. And so, moving through this event, there's much more to it. But getting to Chad's portion of this, if you are interested, again, because of time's sake, Chad has had regression, hypnotic regression done several years later. This happened to us in 97. We found somebody in about 2002 or 2000, I believe it was about 2002, in another state that he had regression done with. And in his regression, he has an account for a great deal of what he feels, or at least in his explanation, his understanding of what happened to him that night, and possibly to our friend. But if you are interested in hearing this, keep in mind that what he also says in this regression is that there's no account of me at all in his experience. I'm not in his experience at all, to the best of our knowledge. And in my memory, because I'm the only one out of the three that would seem to have been put through this experience, whatever the case may be, taken, returned, with memory of what I call in between, where I have none about coming off the street, and I have none about being returned home. But I have a very distinct memory of in between. And in my account, Chad and our friend is not in my experience. So it's all very different.
Okay, so you've woke up in the morning, and you see, as far as you know at the moment, you're on your own. You haven't found Chad, and you haven't found your friend. You're on your own. You're thinking, how the hell have I ended up here? So what next then?
Well, as I said to you, there's a whole lot in between of the trauma that I'm being put through in the bathroom, because I got something in my upper arm, which I have x-rays for. But I've discovered all these years, nobody cares about these x-rays, which I find amazing. But I'll just point that out. I've done everything I know how to do to try to show folks what's happening, or at least, my take on this, and I can't explain it. But so I've got an object in my upper arm. So I'm in the bathroom losing my mind, trying to figure out what the hell is in my upper arm. I go through some trauma in the bathroom by myself. I come out of that bathroom and I'm heading straight for that lump, because it's got to be Chad. I can't take any more. At the same time, I'm coming towards Chad. Chad's out of bed. He's awake now. It's about probably an hour or so after I come to. He's heading straight for me as I'm heading straight for him. It's almost like in slow motion. I can see in his face, because I've known him long enough at that point. I can see in his face, he's clueless. And that's terrifying me. I mean, this is all happening instantly. He can certainly see in my face I'm going through all kinds of hell. And in the breath of the hell I feel I'm experiencing is, I'm also pointing at my arm saying, I got something in my arm, kind of crying that out of my soul. And I'm waiting at any second for him to tell me what happened to us last night and how did we get home. And I could tell instantly he could not answer any of that. Then I'll have Chad share with you, he walked around me. Now, keep in mind, I'm in the bathroom prior to me coming out to discover this is Chad, thank God, in my house. But our friend is still missing. So please don't lose sight of that. She's still missing. He notices something about my arms that I didn't take note of, because I'm losing my mind in that bathroom and I'm not exploring every inch of my body. I'm just trying to get to Chad and our friend. But Chad, if you'll share what you saw.
Yeah, when she's kind of pointing at her arm and saying, "There's something in my arm."
It's in my upper arm.
Upper arm, kind of. And as I'm looking, I noticed these bruises, and it was like fingers, like somebody had been holding her. Now they were on both arms, and they were only like 4 digits, and they were very long. The finger, the fingers bruises, the finger bruises are, all the way around her arm. So something with much longer, and I've got a long hand. I've got a pretty good sized hand, and they were longer than mine. So it was just, and they didn't last long. They only lasted, like maybe 24 hours at the most or something. Again, we didn't take pictures of stuff because, we didn't know what was going on. If we...
Oh, it's way beyond that. We absolutely shut down.
Yeah.
We were in a state of terror. And again, I'm not over dramatizing this because where is she at? How do you deal with when somebody's missing? Just, that's something to please keep in mind. We have no idea where she's at. We have no idea what's happened to us. I have now told Chad my memory of my experience. And of course, Chad at that point is blank. He has no memory. The only account he has since then, of course, is since that regression has been done. And there's still very much in there that did not come out during that regression. I'm not saying that, I buy all of this, but I am sharing with you. I love Chad and I respect Chad and I believe Chad that this is his truth.
So it's just Chad that has remembered a little bit about what happened. You still have no memory yourself of what actually happened.
Well,
I'm actually the one that has memory, and Chad had none.
Yeah, I had, when I woke up the next morning, I had no memory. I'm like, I knew we haven't been drinking. I knew we hadn't been doing drugs or anything like that. So, and, your body feels different if you had been drugged or, had been drinking. There was none of that. My last memory was, standing on that stoop. And my next memory is waking up in bed the next morning, and it was just mind blowing.
Okay, and I take it you found your friend.
2 days later, she came to work. That's where I discovered her, was at work, and had been completely silent for 2 days. So we, that went on. That trauma that we were experiencing was continuing. And then her and I reconnected 2 days later. Let me also mention the fact she has given us permission to speak on her account.
Right.
But she probably very wisely has chosen, and still we understand to this day, never intends to ever be public about what has happened, because the way she described it to me is the last thing she remembered is exactly what Chad and I remembered, which was that basically street corner at 11 o'clock at night. And then her experience is extremely different than my memory and Chad's regression. And in her experience, doesn't seem to involve either of us at all. So, it's just, it's extremely convoluted. It's very involved. And it has been, so this experience we have titled Orbduction in the French Quarter. And of course, Orbduction is a brand new word that we would love to see get introduced into the community of people interested in this concept, if you will, or this experience, or whatever is really going on here. We are the first to come forward, either, again, wisely, not wisely, whatever the case may be. We never intended to write a book. We never intended to be public about any of this. All our objective ever had been was to find others and to try to understand what's happening with us. We have also, let me mention, we've also discovered that Chad's father is an experiencer as well. That's the only word I know that seems to fit. He and Chad's stepmother, his wife, she claims that they experience the same craft, same shape of craft, that we apparently, I didn't look at it long enough to tell you what shape it was. Chad's the one that took that in. But Chad's description's always been consistent about the shape of that craft. And when he repeated this to his father and stepmother, who absolutely have no interest in being public, she indicated that they saw that craft down in Mexico. We saw ours in Louisiana, several years apart. That's
Right.
kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
So I mean, okay, so that's an incredibly strange experience. What I mean, since then you've got some recollection of what happened. I mean, what we describe us a little bit about these beings and the nature of them. Were they frightening? Were they peaceful? What was your take on them?
Well, what came out in my regression is we're standing on that stoop. We're again just very bored, ready to go home. I see this bright light coming from around the corner, and so I walk around the corner. I get the girls' attention, and we all three walk around the corner, and there's this orb. It's just this bright white ball of light and energy. It was probably about a half a block down the street. It was probably about 12 foot in diameter, and it was about 15 foot off the ground. And when we get around the corner, we stand there kind of looking at it for just a few seconds, and it just comes towards us and just engulfs us. It just pulls us in. It orbducts us. It takes us. In my next memory, I'm in this, walking down this hallway, this corridor, just kind of gently turning to the right. I'm following this little being in front of me, and he's probably about 4 foot tall. He's got a big bulbous head now. Only saw him from behind. But he had no hair or anything like that. His skin was kind of like a pale gray kind of color. Now he had substance to him. He wasn't like this little skinny guys that you see on TV. He had substance. I mean, he was dwarfish. He kind of waddled when he walked. And on the corner of out of the corner of my eye to my left, I could see a tall blonde female walking beside me. Again, this describes our friend that's with us, but I did not turn to see who it was or if it was her or anything like that. That I remember. My next memory is I'm in this room that just seems infinite. It just seems just to go on forever. It's very dark. To my left, I could see a tall blonde female. This was probably a few yards away. I could see a tall blonde female laying on an examining table. There were 3 beings around her. They were 7, 8 foot tall, very buggy, praying mantis-y kind of looking. Their arms were kind of crinkled. They were wearing these long coats, cloaks, kind of like a Grim Reaper or, without the hoodie. And there's one on each side of her, one at her head. This person never seemed to be in distress or anything like that. I focused my attention back to my immediate. And I look over to my right, and there's this little blue being. And he's just this bright, vibrant, just beautiful blue. And his aura, his presence was that of like a scientist / shaman / healer, professor, just this old, just knowledge, ancient knowledge. He goes over and he gets this box, picks up this box, and he has it in his right hand. He takes it. Now, he only has 4 digits. And like I said, very long fingers. He's only about maybe 4 foot tall, very thin, very wiry. He takes his left hand and puts it into the side of the box. And when he pulls his hand out, there's this substance kind of free floating above his hand. He takes his right hand, he sets the box down, he takes his right hand and puts it up kind of in a peace sign, or, like you see the depictions of Christ and
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
with 2 fingers up and the outer fingers folded in.
Mm.
And when he does this, this substance starts spinning. Now it's blue, just like him. It has little metal flakes or some kind of glittery kind of substance in it. But when it starts spinning, the blueness and it's going just super, super fast. The blueness and the sparkly kind of stuff kind of dissipate out of it, and they're kind of floating around it and rotating around it like the galaxy, you know, almost. And it starts slowing down, and it had turned into this double-pointed, very clean crystal, double-pointed pyramid-shaped crystal. And I remember thinking to him, you know, why are you showing this to me? You know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an engineer. You know, this is something very important. Why are you showing this to me? And he told me I would know in time, or when it's time.
Was
My
that
next memory?
was
Go ahead.
that like a vocal he spoke, or was it because sometimes these people say it's kind of almost like a telepathy where it just goes in? Was this actually audible, or?
No, correct. Yeah, it was all telepathic, all in my brain, you know. And even when I spoke to him, I don't remember moving my mouth. You know, it was like I just thought it to him, you know, why are you showing this to me? So in my next memory, as I'm in this other room and I'm all by myself, there's 3 walls, 2 that are very straight, one that's kind of concave. There's a leather chair in the middle of the room, and I always thought it was kind of, you know, out of place. And the walls are, you know, even when I was in the hallway in this room, the walls are just very smooth, metallic gray. And the wall that was kind of concaved, I thought was a solid wall, but when I walked a little closer to it, I could see through it, almost as if it was a window. But I mean, it was the whole wall, and the wall was probably, you know, 15 foot long, you know, 8, 9 foot tall. And when I look out, I could see like stars, and you know, it's like I'm out in the galaxy somewhere. And, you know, there's other things that happen, but, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of my experience. My next memory is waking up in bed the next morning, just kind of, you know, asking Alta, you know, how the hell we got home.
What this blonde being as well? Did you get was she human, or did she look alien?
She looked human.
Right.
She was like, when she was laying on the examining table, she was nude, but it was almost like, you know, I don't know about there, but here, you know, here in the States, if now they've gotten a lot more relaxed lately, but you know, they'll blur the body parts, you know, and that's how she was, you know, that's how I saw her, you know, it was like blurred from head to toe, you know, so I couldn't tell who it was or what it was, you know.
Could it have been your friend, or I suppose not, because she obviously didn't. She would have said if it was, I guess. But
yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea.
But you know, I'll just add at this point, I've always, and again, I can't prove nothing about nothing, but I've always had the strangest sense that it was her.
Yeah.
He has also. Again, we're very cautious because, you know, these whole experiences are so much based on our memory and non-memory and trying to get help kind of language. But, you know, this is what we keep trying to offer to anybody that's willing to hear us. Again, and especially for anybody who has experienced or think that they have what they can't explain. It's just, you know, there are just so many of us who are basically saying so often the same things. Our friend, if I might just very quickly, because she has, as I said, given us permission and allowed us, and I've gotten that in writing from her, and we're still friends all these years later, long distance. But she again, and I'll make it as brief as possible, she indicated to me, and I feel fairly sure that I was the only one that she felt comfortable to say this to, because this isn't something she'd go around telling folks naturally, and I feel it's because of my native background and coming from Arizona originally, excuse me, she knew this about me. I've always had my regalia, my traditional tribal dance. I'm a dancer, traditional dancer, what have you. And she knew this about me and my mom. So she shares with me that just briefly prior to her having that night with us that we can't explain or account for other than what we're sharing with you. Last thing she remembers is 11 o'clock at night. The next thing she knows, she's now behind the steering wheel of her moving car, and it's moving slowly. And it hit a parked car, and it knocked off her rear view mirror. She says this is what jolted her too. The car is also in another section of the city from where she parked the car that morning. So, again, a whole lot more to her experience. But, very different than my account, very different than Chad's account. All of us having these very different accounts of one night.
On the show, quite a while ago now, we had Ray Hernandez on the shows from the Free Experience, or the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. Have you hooked up with those guys, or are you aware of them?
We are aware. He actually contacted us several years ago before Free actually got launched.
Right.
And, we had a nice conversation, but we've chosen not to go in that direction.
Right. Okay. We're sort of pressing onto time and stuff. Obviously you've got your book out, Orbducted in the French Quarter. Is there anything else, any events you've got coming up, or any other bits and pieces you'd like to let our listeners know about?
Just the invitation to all of you to come to New Orleans, come to the French Quarter, and we'd love to meet you. And Chad's an amazing host. He knows the quarter very well, and it's a very interesting environment and never boring, to say the least.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody come down if you visit the French Quarter and say hi. Hit us up on Facebook. Our Facebook page is the same as our book title, Orbducted in the French Quarter. So give us a like. You can pick up a copy there, and we appreciate your time.
We so appreciate you. Thank you so much for this time.
No, that's it's been fascinating. This stuff really does it gets you thinking. Just one more thing before we go. If you were to say, if someone said were these aliens good or bad or whatever they were they negative or positive, what would you say?
In my experience, all I felt was love. Even when supposedly this person's on the table and everything, I did not feel any kind of malice or anything like that. Now I do believe that there is good, bad, and the ugly, everywhere, including wherever these people, these beings are from. But in my experience, it was all positive.
Right. Well, fascinating stuff. I'm sure we've got some listeners out there that are intrigued with this story. Thought-provoking stuff, controversial and very, very, very interesting. And I really appreciate you both for coming on the show and telling us the story. It'll be great to have you back on again at some point and to update us. And you're more than welcome.
And to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And that was Chad and Alta Dillard with a fascinating account. Then again, their book there is Orbducted in the French Quarter. As I said at the beginning of the show, I do like to indulge in the open-minded stuff. And, we put it on the show and you guys listen to it and you make your own minds up. Yeah, it's all good. Again, this is going to be the first show that we will upload onto our YouTube channel at the same time as our RSS feed from our website. So this will, from this point onwards, I plan on doing that at least for the time being. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Let us know what you think about the show, if you've got any other recommendations that may complement what we are talking about today. And likewise, if you want to come on and challenge it, or someone that's a skeptic or perhaps has some different ideas about what the experience was, because I know there's a lot of people out there that believe in these kind of experiences but have a completely different philosophy on what the encounter actually is, and so on. So till the next time, I'm going to be looking forward to it. Take care. Bye.